President Joe Biden won't apologize for his administration's handling of the crisis at the border.
If an unaccompanied child ends up at the border, we're just going to let him starve to death and stay on the other side. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. The judgment has to be.
And he blasted Republican efforts to tighten state election laws, calling them un-American.
It's sick. It's sick.
President Biden's first news conference is now in the books, and we bring in political insider Armstrong Williams to discuss. Armstrong, good morning. So how do you think the president did, and do you think that Mr. Biden was pressed enough by reporters in the room on the major issues?
I'm so glad you asked that question because he was not prepped by the reporters. There were some good questions regarding immigration, which he sidestepped. He referred to, when he asked about the filibuster, that his former predecessor, Obama, said it was a Jim Crow relic, which implied that they were going to use race in their attempt to try to overturn the filibuster, which Joe Manchin, our senator, which is not going to support. And I think even more important, Mel, is what happened after the press conference. If you look at the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the mainstream media, I read all these stories before coming on this morning. I only found one report where they actually used the critic of Biden, which was David Axelrod. Every other quote came from someone who wanted to support or uphold Biden. Even when the New York Times, if you read the New York Times today, they say he quelled all the stuff that the conservatives are fueling, that he's not up for the task. He was up for it. He handled the facts. And it's not necessarily true. He did look tired. He looked fatigued. Even on NBC, a reporter talked about how great he was, but then he talked about how fatigued he was. Obviously, Biden did a very good job with his press conference. He did not put his foot in his mouth. I would give him credit for that. He was throwing toss softballs in order for the American people to really find out what's going on with the border. Listen, a press conference is not a strategy. Making statements is not a strategy. The American people deserve to know the strategy for the border, the strategy for Afghanistan. Many people know that our soldiers are in Afghanistan as sitting ducks because they know it benefits the military industrial complex, and they're just sitting there for no reason dying so this complex can make money and get rich at the expense of our soldiers. That has to be addressed, and he has to talk about how we're going to get our boys out of Afghanistan along with these other issues.
Well, the president did make some news yesterday. He's got a new goal on COVID shots, 200 million now in his first 100 days, which is double the previous goal. And he also is going to run for re-election. So now we know at least those two things. But Mr. Biden really seemed most passionate when he was talking about voting rights. And we know some 40 states now are considering tightening those voting rules. Georgia just announced restrictions in their state. And you talked about the filibuster a minute ago, saying that it's racist. What would be the implications of doing away with the filibuster?
Melanie, again, a great question. This is all about H.R. 1. They don't really care about the filibuster. The only thing that they care about is cementing to make sure that all Americans can vote absentee ballot with little or no identification. And Melanie, think about this. When you go to the airport through security, you must have an ID. When you go to the banks, you must show your ID. It's absolutely crazy and insane for Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and their team to make us believe that they're going to pass this voter rights ID, this voter rights law, and you're not going to have identification, and everybody can just do a mail-in ballot. What Governor Kemp did in Georgia set the precedent of where they're willing to go with this. They're not going to allow these Democrats to change our election laws, which are unconstitutional, going forward. And Georgia showed you what's in the future in terms of how they're going to deal with these voter rights laws. They're not racist. It's addressing issues where Democrats want to have a repeat of what happened in 2020 with the election of Joe Biden in states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. And Republicans and voters are saying, we're not having it. And this is the only thing they're concerned about is H.R. 1 and voting this legislation into law. And Joe Manchin and the Senate is dead on arrival when it arrives in the Senate.
Lots to digest from yesterday's news conference. Thanks so much, Armstrong Williams. And you can catch the Armstrong Williams Show every Saturday morning right here on WJLA 24/7 News. It airs at 10:30 in the morning.